I cannot believe that the Hokies did it again. Another just devastating loss to Clemson this weekend, falling 24 to 14. I mean, this game was unreal. Tech, now they haven't beaten a ranked team since UNC in 2021, which we all know was a dramatically overrated team at the time and should not have been anywhere near the top 10 at that point in the season. They just were not at all what anyone expected them to be. I don't even think they finished that season ranked, despite being in the top 10, sort of like a Florida State situation this year. It was pretty bad. But Virginia Tech, I mean, come on. You allowed 24 points in the second half after being up 7-0 going into the locker rooms. I'm just this is a headache game, to say the least. Nothing went right. Just tragic. This is how this game ends up. You hate to see it. Now, before we really jump into this game, let's talk about our video sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball to the NHL, UFC, and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So the Hokies just overall did not play well in this one. When you look at the top performers, it's a good amount of the defense. They played a pretty good game overall, at least for the first really big chunk of it. Now, naturally, defense started to wear down a little bit over the course of the game, started to get tired as Clemson was dominating possession overall. But the defense played well. The offense, only a couple of bright spots, if you could call them that. I think Colin Schlee was pretty okay in the fourth quarter. He had 28 yards on the ground, 7 for 17 passing, 73 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He didn't have that comeback that you wanted him to. He had that 1 interception. Not terribly efficient, but you're in a really tough situation at that point in the game. You're behind over 2 scores, and you only have so much time to do it. The offense hasn't been working. They're not in a groove. It's a tough spot to come into the game. So only so much you can ask for there. He did get the 1 touchdown late in the fourth, but you needed a lot more there for a lot more than just that fourth quarter. Felton had 68 yards and 6 catches. Other than that, the offense relatively quiet all the way around. Drones had a few rushing yards, but he was kind of hit or miss there. Seems like he's been a little bit limited. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But other than that, it was really all defense. That's really all it was. Defense and special teams. Keyshawn Burgos blocked a field goal from Clemson. They are kind of notorious at this point for letting their field goals get blocked. Knocks it up in the air, and Quentin Reddish, 77-yard return, his first touchdown since middle school, puts the Hokies on the board 7-0 there in the first half. I mean, that was huge. You get a little bit of a beamer ball situation, some special teams action, putting some points on the board. That's what you love to see. Hokies had the lead going into the half, and, offense wasn't moving, but overall you're feeling pretty okay about it. You're in a very winnable game with a touchdown lead. You held Clemson scoreless at the half. Not too bad overall. You can live with some offensive struggles when the defense is looking like that, as long as the offense finds a way to finally turn it on, right? You're not feeling too terrible about that. You'd like to see better. But all in all, at the end of the first half, not in a bad situation with the 7-point lead against a ranked team. Now, the defense, though, let's talk about them. Jalen Jones, another interception. He's been lighting it up, especially at home, just really developing into a great player. I mean, just another interception. Come on. Like, he's had a great couple of weeks. He had that one against Georgia Tech for a pretty solid return after the pick. And then this one here against Clemson, you love to see what he's doing on the field. In addition, APR, Cole Nelson, Sam Brumfield, and Keontae Jenkins all had one sack each for 25 yards in total, and Jenkins had two other tackles for loss. He has been just all over the place, wreaking havoc, especially in the Syracuse game. It felt like every time someone was getting pressured, behind the line of scrimmage, every time the back or Klubnik was, you know, looking at getting sacked or tackled for a loss, it was Jenkins right there wreaking the havoc, bringing him down in the backfield. He had a great game, I think. And, all in all, the defense was impressive, especially in that first half, right? Scoreless. A ranked team, Clemson's good. Sure, are they not that top 10 team that maybe everyone thought they were earlier in the season? Had that big dud against Louisville? Yeah, but overall, Clemson's still a good team. They're still very well coached, and they've got a ton of talent, a very talented program. You know that Clemson's going to have that. If you have them scoreless and kind of sputtering out on offense in the first half, that's not too bad. That's really a great situation. But the second half, the defense just starts running out of gas, right? You can only expect so much from them. They've been a bend, don't break team, and they didn't break in the first half, but the offense, you got to put some points on the board. You got to take the pressure off the defense a little bit, and you got to give them a minute to sit on the bench. Oh my goodness. Clemson dominated, especially in the first half, just with sheer possession time. Tech only had 11 minutes of possession in the first half. That's pretty bad. Clemson had 7 more seconds of possession in the first quarter than Tech did in the first half. 7 more seconds in the first quarter than the Hokies did in the entire first half. That's pretty bad. Clemson had nearly 37 minutes for the game compared to the Hokies' 23. You can only expect so much from a defense who doesn't get time to get a sip of water. They don't get time to sit down for a minute and dissect some game plan. The offense could not do anything. And, speaking of that, 35 yards of offense in the first quarter and 61 yards in the second quarter. Get this, the second quarter, the Hokies had 2 more penalty yards than they did rushing yards. That's pretty wild. 2 more penalty yards than they did rushing yards in the second quarter. 96 total yards of offense for the first half. Ugh. I mean, come on. That is just not good. Nothing was working. The throws were not finding their home. And when they were on the money, the receivers on both sides were having a lot of trouble catching the ball. I mean, the Hokies had 6 drops. Clemson was trying to give Tech the game by dropping the ball over and over and over again. But clearly the yips are contagious because both teams were kind of struggling just to hold on to it on quite a few pretty clean throws as well, if I do mention that. I mean, there were a lot of good throws that just got dropped. Not something you expect to see all too often at this point, but just sputtering offense, not good, to simplify it. And then, going to the game plan, Bashal Tutin in the game, you love that, but very, very limited Bashal Tutin, clearly still bugged by things. and functioning as a decoy out there. I understand the decoy idea, right? I get it, but if you're not giving him any volume at all and he's kind of having trouble with it and he's not healthy, why would you not just sit him before the bye week if you're only going to give him like 4 carries? Just put Coney in the game, give him a few carries. I mean, yeah, the running backs, they're pretty thin right now with Malachi Thomas also out. But you can't stray from the run game with this team. That's what Virginia Tech has been built on the last couple of years. That's what the Hokies do best. They win the game when they run the ball well, and that's why Bashal Tutin has been so key to this team. Now, I know you can't just have him play through an injury at some point. It gets bad enough that you got to sit him. But if you're going to put him in the game as a decoy, he either needs to be healthy enough to get some volume or you need to leave him out of the game to rest. They've got an off week next week. Just let him get healthy because as a decoy, he can only do so much out there with no volume. At some point, it just kind of felt like Clemson realized, hey, this guy's not going to touch the ball. He's kind of just out here as like maybe an extra blocker. So you're not really getting much out of the decoy there. So what's the point? Just let him rest up and be healthy so that way you have a better shot at the next 2 games. You want him there for Duke. You want him there for UVA. You want him as close to 100% as you can. So just let him rest up. I don't get it. The Clemson defense hasn't been great against the run either. So not only do you stray from the run game a lot while, having essentially a player in the backfield that isn't going to touch the football, it's just a bad game plan there. It doesn't make any sense. I just don't understand this game. I'm going to be honest. I don't think it made much sense. With Tootin in there as a decoy, which wasn't really working that well in my opinion. And not only that, I think Schlee got put in way too late. No reason to wait until the fourth quarter when it just wasn't happening. Drones didn't seem to be throwing the ball super well. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, clearly he's limited as well. We know that something has probably been bothering him with the legs. It looks like it's likely something with the knee. You could see him in like a knee brace type of thing. It didn't look like it was anything too serious. Anything, you know, not like one of those big, huge braces with like the big metal brackets or anything, nothing like that. But clearly a little bit limited, and he's been wearing something to help him deal with that. So I don't see why Schlee isn't in the game earlier. He can move pretty well. He's got a decent set of legs. He's not quite as good as Drones on the ground, but with Drones limited, that kind of balances things out a little bit. But Schlee has a better arm. And I don't understand why he's not in the game at least a little bit earlier at that point when the Tech offense has nothing to offer, especially in the first half. There was just zero. And if you don't really have that rushing attack because you have Tootin there and you're not going to give him the ball, then at that point you're resorting to throwing, and it's not working with Drones at this point. So why don't you have Schlee throwing the ball? It doesn't add up for me. He had a really good game at Syracuse. I thought he looked great. He has a really sharp throw. So why wait until the fourth? Why wait until Clemson's already, taken a sizable lead against the Hokies? Why wait that long to make a swap? I know that this team trusts Drones and they're comfortable with him. He's experienced with the team, but I just feel like it was way too long to make that decision. And I, hindsight's 2020. It's easy to say that, but I was feeling that a lot earlier in the game. Like, we should probably make a swap here. You can only stick with something that's not working for so long. And especially when Drones' legs are less of a factor because he's somewhat limited, I don't see the point in not swapping out there. And once again, give him the extra rest and just try and change things up to see if you can win this game. It was really weird. I would like to see a little bit more out of Schlee because he does throw the ball really well. And, you got a pretty good receiving room, but this game, a lot of drops on both sides, pretty sloppy, not much offense. But the defense, they did their share. They held up so well for most of this game, but at some point you're going to break when the defense, it felt like, was out there the whole game. The offense just didn't have a good time. I mean, 2 of 14 on third down conversions. Meanwhile, Clemson was 9 of 19. So the Hokies just struggling with that third down and a ton of punts, and nothing's working. You got to make some changes, and now you're sitting at 5-5. You have to beat Duke or UVA to become bowl eligible. There's no reason that this team should be where they are right now at this point in the season. At 5-5, they're better than that. This is a relatively easy schedule. Now, granted, it's much tougher than it looks during the off season, but still, it's not that bad of a schedule. You should be well ahead of where you're at. Just not a good point in the season. I'm really disappointed with how this season has turned out. I'm going to be honest. I think somewhere there needs to be a change that's made. Somewhere along the line, you got to make some swaps because things aren't working and you can't just keep dragging it on, right? You can't keep running with the same thing and failing over and over and over again. It's kind of crazy. Just like in the press conference in there, talking about how the third quarter is the big quarter where the Hokies have a pretty strong negative point differential. And Price said, yeah, we kind of do the same thing at the half, and we got the same game plan coming out of the locker room for the second half. And that it's something that they need to look at and make some changes with and address that because the third quarter's just not been going well. And yes, I do agree that as someone who's not a Division I football coach, obviously, that you need to make some changes there, but why is it taking this long? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, and a lot of that happens behind the scenes. Maybe things are happening. It could be. But you need to see those results on the field, and the Hokies haven't seen those. They haven't really seen them a lot this year. Just kind of struggling a lot. And it's really disappointing to see where this season is at this point in time. You thought they were going to be so much further ahead. You thought maybe they hit 6 wins and bowl eligibility in like week 8, week 9. You know, that's just not where it is at all. So we'll see how things go off next weekend, and then Duke and UVA. We'll see what happens next.